Welcome to episode 15 of the Dan John podcast from danjohnworkouts.com. Boy, it's good to see everybody again. One thing I'd like to say is that it seems like every week the questions get better and better. This week's questions, there's actually a couple. Yeah, I'm looking forward to answering. They're good questions. They're appropriate questions for what I do. You know, one of the things that's hard for a lot of people is, and it's worse now than it was back in the day. When there was just magazines like Strength and Health, and Bob Hoffman would say something, it was in a magazine, you'd read it, and then you'd maybe ask the other guys in the gym who read Strength and Health, and what do you think of this? And they'd be like, he's a phony, and they tell you a story. Well, the nice thing about that is only once a month would you get hit with something that was kind of stupid. Well, when I was young, certain cults started to show up. And I gotta be careful about it. That's not necessarily what I mean, but that's an easy way to understand it. When machines started showing up, and I gotta tell you, the Universal machine was great. There's a lot of good to it. When the Nautilus machines showed up, you can't argue with the quality of the Nautilus machines. But what happened is you had Arthur Jones and Ellington Darden, both quality. I mean, I think I've had several conversations with Ellington, though he always forgets that we did talk. They became a little bit like high intensity training. And if you don't improve, you're doing something wrong. And then some other things started showing up, and you'll see this in a lot of authors. You're not following the program, and if somehow you deviate from the program as written or what we're all doing, there's something wrong with you. In my own career, and so some of you, I've been writing online since 1998. My journals, my workout journals, and this is my current one, go back to 1970. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been right about a lot. It's funny, when I wrote that book, 40 Years with the Whistle, I realized that I've been right a lot. The mistakes I've made is when I've fallen for it. And for 2 years, I did Nautilus. And there was some value to it. After about the first 6 weeks, it was great. I did CrossFit for a while, and I'm not sure I ever got any value out of it. But for example, when I tried this thing we call now Easy Strength, which you can read all about in the resources in the download area on the site, man, it was a game changer for me, especially late in my career. And I still argue that if you want to just get strong, do Easy Strength. But I've never been much of someone called me a guru one time, and that really bothered me. For one thing, I teach religious studies. And so, there's a touch. I mean, I'm not trying to be politically correct or anything, but there is a touch of ism to that. It's not an appropriate term to use for someone like myself. I'm a strength coach, and I write books. And if you like what I write, you read more, and that's yay for everyone. But what happened with this question about this kettlebell program last week is I'm pretty convinced a lot of people who commented, and I'm sure there's comments on all kinds of forums I can't get to too. I don't think people listen to my point. The point I was trying to make, and let's go into 3 parts here, if you don't mind. Point number 1, if you have a question about a specific program that is written by a person who's alive, I think it's smart to either ask that person or any of their leadership or followers or people in the know. Asking someone like myself who's, and the one person kept saying, well, you wrote an article about it. Well, actually, Mike Brown wrote an article about it, and then I just added some fluff. But so first, generally, ask the people who do the program. If you got an injury, if your shoulders hurt constantly from kipping pull-ups because you do CrossFit, don't ask me. I don't believe in kipping pull-ups. I think, to me, it just looks like a way to get yourself into shoulder surgery. Now, if I was a shoulder surgeon, I'd be all for them. The second would be this, is you always need to make sure you listen to everything I'm trying to say. I take great pride in being a very prudent person. I look on both sides of the issue. I am a moderate in practically everything. I have the rare ability in the United States in 2019 to listen to both sides of an argument. I don't instantly fall into one side or the other. Doesn't mean I don't have opinions, but it means I do listen. And so when you ask me a question, you're going to get a bit broader framed response. The question was about whether this person could do just half Turkish getups versus Turkish getups. Well, and as I tried to point out, no one's putting a gun to your head. It's just a training program. And I guess the third thing is one person, and it's nice because the person emailed me and apologized, but they sort of raised the flag that I'm a hypocrite. And boy, I'm a hypocrite about a lot of things in life, but I don't think I'm a hypocrite when it comes to how I coach. My vision is always on the long term, even when the nationals are this weekend. As I told my wife one time, I was watching one of my athletes just fail miserably at the most important track meet of this person's life. And I was sitting there next to my wife, and it was obvious it was going downhill. And she said, "What are you going to tell him?" And I said, my job is to remind this person that, and just like the Kahil Gibran, the author, the poet of about a century ago, he's often known as the prophet, one day you'll look back and you'll be extremely happy. And the seed of that happiness will be this terrible day today. So for me, I'm always trying to encourage my athletes. I go to their weddings, I hold their babies, I send them money when they graduate or get their doctorate. Or, for example, I had a conversation today with my attorney, who's also one of my former students, and we were joking about a lecture I gave when he was in the 9th grade. To me, this to me is a long-term investment if I'm helping you. And so as I sit back and I saw some of the negative stuff being written, not only in the comments, but on different forums, I guess, and I'm not saying I'm wounded, because it's, I'm not afraid of somebody who types at a typewriter, types on a computer and, someplace. But it bothered me because I think it took away from my intention of trying to help this person. So there you go. Hey, let's answer some new questions and let's start some new controversies, shall we? Sounds good to me. Well, our first question this week comes from Joey. I've been told by a physical therapist. By the way, I find this question particularly interesting because of the next little part. Ready? I have been told by a physical therapist I have weak hip flexors. When I read that, I thought to myself, well, I'm ready to die. Now I've seen everything. Almost universally, the knock we get from physical therapists is that people's hip flexors are too strong and they tug you forward. So it's fascinating to hear somebody who's got the opposite problem. Now, if this is true, just go back to every ab book written in the 1960s that we now say is all terrible. Don't do it. You will have this, and do those exercises. But let's go. Is there any exercises that you would recommend to address this issue? Well, if it's true you have weak hip flexors, I think we could probably deal with it in a safe way. And there's a double win here by an exercise that was recommended to President John F. Kennedy, hanging knee raises. Hanging knee raises. And I guess you could also do hanging straight leg raises too. But in the beginning, keep the knees bent, and because if there is a weakness here, the bent knee will have less of a lever arm and be lighter. But I got to tell you, the upside of this, first, you're going to get that free traction, poor man's chiropractor, by hanging from there. The second thing you're going to get is a chance to work on your grip strength. The third, and we used to think this is true, and I still think there's value, is that hanging and bringing the knees up helps with posture long term. Also, too, your ab wall is going to have to contract, and while it's contracting, your hip flexor is going to work. So that would be the very first thing I'd recommend. And don't forget, the reason I'm recommending that is the grip strength, the poor man's chiropractor, the posture work, and the ab wall work, which is going to kind of sing in orchestra with that need for the weak hip flexor. But I got to tell you, Joey, I mean, it'd be interesting to hear how many people have this particular issue. He goes on to write, I was thinking a sumo deadlift might be something I could try, but I wanted a second opinion. Yeah, I didn't see why that would help. I thought about it for a while, and I'm wondering if you're thinking that finishing hinge will help you. But man, I don't know if that's true, but I'm just guessing here. I've generally adopted a conventional or bust mindset for the 3 or so years I have lifted. Now, here's the thing, Joey. If you're going to be a power lifter, you're going to have to think this through a lot closer. I would suggest you talk to somebody who maybe's got a few more hours in powerlifting than I do. I'd love to have you work with Marty Gallagher on this because, most of his people did conventional, but Ed Cohen did sumo. And I've always been told that you were you're born to sumo. So it'll be an interesting route you have there. One thing I would recommend if you do have weak hip flexors, sorry, I'm going to say tight hip flexors until I'm dead because that's all we ever hear. That's all we ever say. But weak hip flexors, maybe you need to do those hanging leg raises. And over time, you could probably even put some load in, like maybe hold on a medicine ball between your knees or something like that and build up some reps. But until that weakness is addressed, I wouldn't worry too much about max deadlifts unless you're competing, and then you're going to have to work this through somehow, okay? Very unusual question, Joey. Thank you so much. Our next question actually really made me kind of happy to read. Okay, so this is from our reader, Robert. My question is about sprinting. Good. Ask the discus thrower about sprinting. Having made this next part's quite funny. Ready? Having made a rash and foolhardy wager with my eldest son for my 52nd birthday that I could run the 100 meters in 13.5 at age 55. I got to tell you, Robert, I coached high school track and field here in Utah. Utah's not exactly known for its sprinting, but at 13.5, you do okay in a lot of our races. That's not necessarily high praise, but that's a good time for 55. I have begun to train to that end and would be very interested in your thoughts for a long-term strategy. Yeah, it's a great long-term plan, especially the fact that you have 3 years. I've played and coached football, soccer, up until a year or so ago, and I've always sprinted incidentally, but I have no formal athletic training and not done any strength work other than body weight circuits and such. I'm 5'8", 150. That's a good size for your age. And then he has a little plan he's going to do, and then I'll give it to you, and then I'll give you my comments. My plan for the first year is to build some basic strength and improve my mobility. Years of football means tight hamstrings and zero ankle flexion. So to begin with, I'm doing 4 lifts: military press, pull-ups, squats, and deadlifts. And honestly, if I was going to pick 4, those would probably be the 4 I'd pick, Robert. 3 times a week with kettlebell swings and carries on the other days. I also try to fit in an interval session on the turbo trainer and 1 long ruck, 6 to 7 miles, with a pack. Inevitably, I rarely manage all of this, but always do the lifting. I'm 5'8", 150. One of the things I strongly recommend you do, and I don't know of a high school coach or I'm sure you could probably, I'm not sure where you're from, but there's got to be a track and field team close to you, a high school track coach of some time, maybe sometimes a football coach. Call up, offer to pay them, and get some time on the track having someone look at your sprint technique. Because right now we're just we're kind of in imaginary world right now. And I, by the way, I do think the deadlifts, I do think the militaries and the pull-ups, I know for sure will help you with your speed. But unless your technique is on, you're going to be wasting speed. No offense to my brothers and sisters in soccer, but you guys tend to run like this. And that's just not an optimal way to move. So you need to run like a track athlete with, you're going to be a little bit taller. Your head's going to be forward. You're not necessarily you don't run down the track, you bounce, 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 bounce down the track. You want your glutes to be freakishly strong. You're going to have to really make sure your ab wall is locked on. For carries, I'd start recommending suitcase carries so that you build up that whole side structure to allow you not to do any wobbling as you go. Boom. We do a drill, been doing this drill a long time. Now I do it with a ball here in the head, but we do speed skater drills, driving the head side to side like this to get the athlete to practice being on, that the head is on top of that bounding foot. And so the speed skater drill with the ball here, the ball exacerbates any issues of tension. A couple of resources I want you to look up if you can. I'd like you to read up on Percy Cerruti. I'll be mentioning Cerruti in this podcast again, Cerutty. One thing I'd like you to start thinking about is hill sprints, and maybe even, if you have the opportunity, sand dunes. Now, if you live where I just was this weekend in Kansas, hill sprints are going to have to be sled pulls or stadium steps. Sand or soft running, I'd like you to get. So what I'm trying to get you to do is by reading Cerruti, we need to build up your volume of just pure running. At the same time, we start to address your technical issues. Okay? Boy, this is a good goal. Your strength to weight ratio is going to be really important. And that's why you doing body weight exercises isn't going to help you as much over the next 3 years as we move towards this goal. I would hate to say I insist, but I would really like to see you military pressure body weight 150, very doable, and at least deadlift your body weight over the next couple of years, which is 300, which again is very doable because you need some basics. So lot thrown at you here. You need basic strength to military body weight to deadlift double body weight. You need some technical practice. You need some time. You need some time bouncing up and down as a runner. The sand dunes, the soft grass, the maybe even going off. Like I'm just pointing to where we were doing it in my house. There's trails over there. You can walk, run, you can shuffle, you can do fartlek, which means speed play, where you sprint up a hill, walk, jog, stride, butt kickers, and just mess around. But you're going to need some time to build up. You need some time to build up the feet, the toes, the ankle, and the bounce in your career. I think this is just a great goal, and I am honored to be part of your process. I would like you to keep me informed on how things are going. I would not worry about the start on your marks, get go for a while, but what I'd like you to work on is we call them speed traps. You can do it with an electronic device or just in training, but where you take your time building your speed up. When you hit like the telephone pole or the tree, then you try to go as fast as you can to the next mark, 30 meters, 20 meters, 40 meters, whatever. And you practice going as fast as you can, pouring on the speed, and then allow yourself, when you get to the next telephone pole or tree, whatever the marker is, then to take a long time slowing down. And those build up, speed traps build up your ability to practice going faster. If you can buy the speed trap device, this probably be the easiest way for you to keep the quality of your sprinting up. So if it's 30 meters and you run 30 meters top speed and you run 5-1, 5-1, 5-1, 5-9, you're done. You're slowing down now. But at 30 meters, month 1, you're running 5-1. Month 2, you're running 5 flat. Month 3, 4-9. We know something good is happening. You literally are getting faster. And I'm also guessing as that's happening, your overall conditioning is improved and your technique's improved. So the speed trap will have great value for you in improving your speed. The final thing, and it would depend on your own personal courage. If you do find a high school track and field coach to give a few whatever pounds or lira or kroner or dollars to, and try to get involved and allow them to train, allow you to train with teams sometimes. 2 sessions a week with a team will do wonders for your speed, because if you have someone here and you're racing, you will run faster. And good luck to you, and stay in touch. This question is from Jury. I'm 26 years old, a mere child, and currently train park bench style, and I really enjoy it. That makes me happy, because if you do that the rest of your life, good things will happen. Can you please recommend me what bus bench program should I incorporate from time to time? There are so many programs, and I would appreciate your opinion. I'm healthy, not overweight, and I have very good powerlifting technique, but I don't know Olympic lifting. Well, you kind of forced my hand a little bit. Remember, park bench programs are these, bus bench programs are these short-term programs where you're focusing on a goal. So, Jury, one of the things that would really help me help you is, well, is there something you want to work on? Now, here's the thing. You could do a park bench program, take a traditional bodybuilding program where you're going to focus on your shoulders for 3 weeks, and you're going to increase your presses to 3 days a week. You're going to do some additional bodybuilding exercises for the shoulders. And at the end of 3 weeks, you do a before and after, and did anything good happen? That might be a good idea. You might even want to look at something like Greg O'Gallagher's programs at Kino Body, and maybe do something like, attack something like, he's got a program I like where you intermittent fast every day, and you have 3 basic core bodybuilding workouts a week, and I think it's brilliant. His programs have names like Warrior Body and Superhero Workout and stuff. I think it's the one called Aggressive Fat Loss. So maybe you could just circle yourself around a bodybuilding idea where you really aggressively go after like body fat or shoulder specialization or something like that. When it comes to me, most of my programs are for, my bus bench programs are for athletic improvement. And so we always have the focus, like with the Big 21 program, which is the clean and press, snatch, clean and jerk, doing 63 reps a workout of those 3, which is a lot. The idea on that for discus throwers is to allow them, all throwers, and a few weeks after that is to be ready to go right into the season. For American football, I'm getting them to go right into the two-a-days and all the contact. So some of my programs wouldn't necessarily fit for you, but maybe someone like Greg O'Gallagher would help you. Now, as a power lifter, one little thing you might want to think about is simply this: compete in a powerlifting meet. My daughter let me know the other day she's going to lift at a meet, I think in March, and she's just training as fun as can be. But the moment she signed her name on that thing and sent the check in, all of a sudden her training bumped up because of that what they called Leonard and those guys used to call end spurt productivity. When you have a deadline, the quality sometimes improves. So you could compete in a powerlifting meet, even if it was just a friendly, circle a date 6 weeks from now and say, I'm gonna max out in all 3 lifts. That might be a little fun idea for you. I hope that was helpful, Jury. Thank you. Cliff has a very simple question and to the point. How can fighters gain strength without retaining excessive tension? Well, it's kind of funny because very simply, strength is tension. That's what it is. You squeeze. There's 2 things that happen. One, all a muscle can do is pull, and as it pulls harder and harder and harder, that it needs more and more tension. And then the other thing to do to lift weights is this isn't the best way to explain it scientifically, but most people know is that you kind of bounce your muscles off each other or off your systems, and you make the lift. But it's all based on lots and lots of tension. Maybe instead of worrying about, you want to gain strength, I would strongly recommend easy strength if you're a fighter. But the idea on the excessive tension, what you need to maybe practice is Bud Winter's ideas of consciously shaking everything out Wiggle your jaw, shake your fingers, be loosey goosey, breathe out, smile, put on extra clothes between lifts, and let the tension be released actively by your body. It's a good question. It is a tough one, but I think, and if you read my book, Now What, I go into a fair amount of depth on this. One of the things you need to do in every sport is find the right tension meter, where you need to be on a scale of 1 to 10. For fighting, you don't want to be at 9. You wouldn't last the bout, nor do you want to be at 1, man. You wouldn't hurt anybody. You got to find your tension level. And the nice thing about being a strength coach is I'm going to teach you high tension, and then we're going to just practice it blowing it off. And that's the great gift weightlifting can do for you as a fighter. Thank you. We got a question here from Chris. When doing a park bench program, how would you incorporate endurance-based skill workouts like swimming, cross-country skiing, and the like? I'm not interested in being competitive in those activities, but I'd like to have fun learning how to do them. Yeah, cross-country skiing is, we'll call it fun. Kind of depends on the snow conditions, but it is a lot of fun. Where should they fit into the schedule? Well, it's your choice. I mean, if you're doing park bench workouts 3 days a week, which is probably what most people do, I mean, the workout should only take half an hour or an hour. That leaves you 23 and a half hours a day to fill in everything else. Or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you lift, and the other 4 days of the week, you swim, cross-country ski, and everything else. I see it as a pretty simple answer. It's interesting because basically I'm parroting what Coach Mon told me in 1977. Lift weights 3 days a week and throw the discus 4 days a week for the next 8 years. And as I always joke, everyone missed that last part where he said 8 years. So there's plenty of time under the sun to enjoy this. I do like the fact that you have swimming and cross-country skiing right next to each other, because here in Utah, those are not concomitant workouts. I guess you could swim in an indoor pool and cross-country ski in one day, but that would be exhausting. Chris, that's a good question. I'd like you to try it and then get back to me on the follow-up, the 3 days a week, half an hour workouts, and doing the other events as often as you can. Thank you. This comes from Todd. And Todd, I got to tell you, I like this question because I'm not only a father and a grandfather, but I'm an uncle. And it's always nice to see family members caring. This question is for my 10th grade niece. She runs cross country, indoor and outdoor track, and I like her for doing that. Boy, I tell you folks, cross country, and all my time in coaching, the kids who did cross country and wrestled, now those are the kids you could always count on to do good things. So while not competitive at distance running events, she is the team's top race walker. Well, good. It's more popular on the eastern coast. She is skinny and has a typical distance runner's build. I think she has a chance to go to the States. However, it seems like she does no specialized training. She trains with the team's distance runners. On rare occasions, they do body weight exercises. She doesn't seem to be taught a whole lot of technique or get much of a chance to practice walking. In New York, the event is 1,500 meters. That's good. Let's stop right there. First off, we know now in elite performance, runners, race walkers, you need to have strength. So if you can, let's just maybe start with two basic things. A deadlift variation. Now, you could also talk me into a squat too, and I'd be okay with that. But from the work of Barry Ross, I've been more and more convinced that the deadlift is more appropriate for runners than the squat, and that comes right out of Percy Cerruti from the 1960s too. So basically a deadlift, and the other one I'd recommend is the pull-up. And it gets back to the question of the 52-year-old man wanting to run faster. A friend of mine years ago, and I don't know if it was ever finished, but had an interesting insight. He noticed that in high school with American football, that the boys who did the most pull-ups ran the fastest 40-yard dashes. And he did something, the thought process is brilliant. He did something I've never heard of. He flipped the idea and he said, what if we did more pull-ups to increase sprint speed? And when you first hear it, you're like, well, doesn't, except it worked. Now, I don't know how scientific this is, but this is 2019, and most people don't believe in science anymore anyway, so who cares? But the idea of doing pull-ups to increase your speed. Now, there's real value in her learning how to do pull-ups. Women I know who do pull-ups, they really get great benefits out of it in physique work, but also too just that general strength, this life strength that goes on. So I would suggest just basically if you can get her to do some deadlifts and some pull-ups, I think you got some real winners there. I'm going to go on the rest of the question. It's a strange event, not so much, and maybe not the most athletic. It's hard for me to envision workouts, routines, etc., although it seems like hip mobility is important. Yeah, I would say not just hip mobility, but hip strength. In your area, the New York Athletic Club, if you're East Coast like I'm guessing, the New York Athletic Club has a very good race walking tradition, and it might be worth your time, a little exploration on the internet and get a conversation going with a race walker. The book Ageless Athletes by Richard Winnett, Winnett, has a whole section on race walker who periodizes training and he takes care of all the business of all the other stuff. It might be worth your time trying to dredge up that book. What are the best things she can do to improve? Can strength training help? I appreciate any advice. Best things she can do to improve is try to get that race walking done as much as she wants. There is a technique to it. It involves a lot of it's a very controlled arm stroke. And of course, there's that style of walking because you always have to have one foot on the ground as you go, and you're climbing over those legs each time. So the more time she can clean up her technique, so there's not a lot of wobbling as she goes and stays real tall and lets everything move, the better. And I do think that deadlifts, I do think that pull-ups, I do think presses might even help her too. I hope that helps. And good luck to her. This question comes from a reader, Prasanth, who just sent this in as we got ready. Hi, Dan. I'm from India, 40 plus, and I've been running since 2013. From what? Okay, old joke. Whenever I step out of my comfort zone, I end up as injured. I lack strength. I'm probably going to recommend strength training. What set of exercises do you recommend for marathon training? I run 3 days a week and can do 6 days of strength training at home. I have a pair of 4 kilo and 6 kilo dumbbells, 16 and 8 kilo kettlebells, and 70 kilograms bar for deadlifts. Well, first off, for a marathon runner, 3 days a week might not be enough. Can you add another gentle long run every week? That's just me being a track coach. Percy Cerruti, the great track and field coach from Australia, 1960s, recommended not only that all runners do this, but also all marathon. But he basically picked 5 very simple exercises: the deadlift, the bench press. I would say the press nowadays, but the bench was very new then. Cheat curls. That's a kind of a power curl, a curl grip power clean. He had an exercise that he called swings, but it doesn't look like the modern kettlebell swing, but let's stick with the modern kettlebell swing. And then he had people do sit-ups, the standard 1960s variation. And then after that, hang from a bar for a while. I still think that's good advice. He felt marathon runners should be able to do a double body weight deadlift and a body weight press. And I still think that's good advice. Most people who run generally just beat themselves up. At 3 days a week, I'm a little surprised every time you increase the volume, you get hurt. It'd be interesting to see maybe your running technique or what kind of place you run on, because it just seems to me that at 3 days a week you shouldn't really be getting a lot of injuries. But yes, lifting weight's going to help. Deadlift, press, swing, power curl, sit-ups. Let's just do that 2 days a week, and maybe on another day a week get some kind of long walk, some kind of a distance-related thing. I hope that helped you. Anytime someone says they're doing something, they keep getting injured. It's like my, I don't know, my spider senses or something come up. I always feel like I'm missing something. I don't see the whole story. But thank you. It's a good question. Okay, our last question for this week comes from Sweden. This is Daniel from Sweden. What a beautiful name. My question is, I train jiu-jitsu 3 days a week. I also do some yoga for recovery and to loosen up my body after sparring sessions. But I do feel that I need some basic strength to straighten up my joints and stability for my lower back. Do you think a program like your park bench program would be a great fit to add into the mix, maybe 2 days a week? Yeah. I mean, that's what park bench is supposed to do. Park bench workouts support, for most people, good nutritional choices. For people who are not strength athletes, it gives you strength to compete in your own world. So yeah, absolutely. I think the park bench generator, you go in there and you pick 2 days a week, put the equipment you have, and boom, just follow it. Strongly suggest you don't overthink anything. Just do the work, knock the reps out, try to add load, try to add reps, try to add progression any way you can, and you'll find yourself getting the word, well, as you know from your language, the word fit is an old Scandinavian word, old Nordic. It means to knit, like knitting a sweater. Well, the more you lift weights, park bench styles, the more knitted you will be, and it might take you a long, positive way to being injury-free, pain-free. That's always a tough one, but continual improvement. Now, this last part. Or what exercises would you recommend for martial arts like grappling? If you were to come to me when you were 8, we would have had you do, the clean and press, the snatch, the clean and jerk. If you know you're strong enough to snatch your opponent, that's a pretty good place to be when you get in trouble. But I'm guessing we're not getting you at age 8, 9, or 10. So just stick with the very basic park bench and see where things go from there. That's a good question. Thank you so much. Well, folks, we come to the end of another podcast. That went very easy. Remember, if you have questions, the easiest way for us to get them is for you to send them to podcasts@danjohnworkouts.com. And as you can see, we try really hard to answer all your questions. Even the ones that come in a little bit later in the week, we still try to get them on. So gentle listener, when you see me staring at the screen real closely like this, it means Brian has just sent me one in a very tiny little box to answer you right now. So we're answering questions that really came up in the last 20 minutes or so. But I really appreciate your time and energy listening to me, and I hope we come back next week with even more important insights.